Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are unpacking something absolutely mind-bending. We're going to be tracking the incredibly chilling medical logs of Dr. Vera Khost. She was an endocrinologist who documented how a localized, unexplained hormonal anomaly literally escalated into a citywide cosmic horror event. Let's just dive right in, shall we?
Okay, so to really grasp this, we need to anchor this bizarre science right inside our own bodies. Think about the last time you were absolutely terrified. You know that feeling? Your hypothalamus ignites, your heart races, your adrenaline just spikes. Now, imagine that happening, not because there's a physical threat in the room with you, but because a sentient frequency embedded in the concrete of your city is literally calling your glands. Seriously, what if your panic attacks weren't a glitch, but a signal?
The endocrine anomaly.
So, our story starts off grounded in cold, clinical reality over at St. Leibniz Hospital. Dr. Vera Khost was a stress response specialist, basically an expert in how our bodies prepare for war at the cellular level. And she started noticing something weird. She was reviewing files of an unprecedented cluster of patients who were presenting with massive HPA axis and catecholamine surges. If you're not familiar, that's just a fancy way of saying a massive, synchronized release of cortisol and adrenaline that completely overrides your parasympathetic control. Your body's calming mechanisms just shut down. She documented 18 different patients suffering from these synchronized hormonal storms, Addisonian crises, thyrotoxicosis, the whole shebang. But here is the kicker. These eruptions weren't random. Actually, scratch that. They were synchronized to a rhythm completely outside of any known biological cycle, and every single patient reported the exact same thing. They felt uncontrollably drawn or called to specific abandoned locations in the city right before the episode hit them.
Digging a bit deeper into the hospital records, Vera identifies patient 0. He's an urban explorer named Marcus Heilbronn. Now, looking at Heilbronn's profile, it's wild. He didn't just feel called. His medical notes explicitly state he was photographing the signal, right before he suffered a fatal thyroid storm at an abandoned apartment on Gravois Avenue. Think about that. His thyroid literally screamed, flooding his entire system with lethal levels of hormones, and it was triggered by something he saw through his camera lens. Naturally, Vera decides to visit that abandoned apartment, and there she finds Heilbronn's desiccated corpse. But clutched in his hands is this photograph, a photograph that literally eats light. It captured a shape that shouldn't exist. A 4D geometric anomaly collapsed into a 2D image. And when Vera looks at it, her visual cortex tries to render this impossible geometry, and instantly she suffers a massive catecholamine surge of her own. But here is where it gets truly terrifying. Her brain follows up that absolute terror with a massive dopamine dump. The shape is infectious just by looking at it, and it triggers this perfect reward loop. Her own brain is rewarding her for being terrified. Section 2. The urban symbiosis. This microscopic cellular event quickly scales up into a macro-level architectural parasitology that maps the entire city. It's like a giant puzzle coming together. As Vera becomes literally addicted to her own panic, tracking this call across all these abandoned spaces, she runs into Sarah Vinn. Sarah's a city planner and, as it turns out, one of 53 active witnesses. And you have to notice the biological shift here. Your baseline human, right, they fight the stress response. Under extreme cortisol, the human body just breaks down. You get heart failure, strokes, bad stuff. But an integrated witness, their body completely adapts. They feed on the terror. They thrive on sustained cortisol levels hitting an impossible 203 micrograms per deciliter. To put that in perspective, those levels would kill you or me in a heartbeat. Sarah reveals that these impossible geometric entities aren't aliens invading from outer space. No, they've grown right here. They are actively feeding on the collective urban stress of the baseline human population. So let's break down this symbiotic life cycle, because it's absolutely crucial. Step 1, human trauma and the everyday anxiety of modern urban life prime our nervous systems. Step 2, the shapes step in. They use old urban infrastructure, think pipes, foundations, electrical grids, as their physical substrate, and they feed on those collective stress hormones. It's like fertilizer to them. Step 3, when an integrated witness, someone with a hypervigilant trauma background like Vera, actively observes the shape, their consciousness actually stabilizes its existence. They collapse it from a quantum probability right into physical reality. Crazy, right? The city's collective unconscious is quite literally growing itself a body.
Section 3. The Witness Network.
As the medical reality completely fractures, those 53 isolated witnesses start linking their nervous systems together into this distributed hive mind. And Vera actually proves she's compatible for advanced integration during a pretty intense crisis. She's at an abandoned psychiatric hospital when Witness 07, a young guy named James, undergoes a fatal stress overload. Vera just reaches out and physically touches him, and by doing that, she unlocks this crazy ability to share his endocrine burden.
Her own system metabolizes his panic, with her parasympathetic nervous system extending a calming influence right into his autonomic balance. These witnesses aren't just surviving anymore. They are achieving distributed consciousness and quantum probability collapse through collective observation. They are literally becoming the city's new regulatory glands.
Now, guided by the quantum models of a Dr. Arnold Shen, Vera takes a massive leap. She volunteers to be the prototype for what they're calling the threshold track, and this launches her into a terrifying 17-day countdown. Day 1, she's doing intensive solo observations of the mature shapes. By day 10, her individual neural architecture permanently begins dissolving into the collective pattern. She stops eating, stops sleeping in any conventional sense. Her brain is literally rewiring itself to process data across the entire city simultaneously. And then, by day 17, they hit it. Critical mass. Complete network totality.
Section 4. The City Awakens.
All right, this is the breaking point. We are now escalating to macroscopic horror, the exact moment the 72 anchored geometric shapes connect across the electrical grids and sewer systems, achieving full-blown urban sentience. And the brutal clinical math of this threshold event? It is staggering. As the city broadcasts its awakening through the physical infrastructure, 8 million baseline humans receive a signal their bodies simply cannot process. 99.9% of the population, that's nearly 8 million people. Imagine a city like New York just dropping over, die from instant strokes and fatal endocrine failures in just 90 seconds, leaving only 0.1%. Just 8,000 traumatized survivors whose hypervigilant nervous systems actually managed to adapt. These 8,000 people instantly and spontaneously integrate. They become the city's new expanded nervous system.
So the city is now a breathing superorganism, and it literally begins to warp physical space. Just think about how the environment distorts. Buildings start connecting through non-Euclidean geometry, meaning you can walk from downtown to the suburbs in 5 steps if you just know the right doors. Walls become totally permeable. And, terrifyingly, there is no escape. At one point, witness 2847 panics and tries to drive out to the suburbs. The sentient infrastructure simply bends the roads, stretching space itself to loop him right back inside. The organism protects its cells no matter what.
Section 5. The Final Standoff.
We are now looking at the inevitable collision between this newly born city superorganism and the completely terrified, unawakened outside world. The hive mind, which is now calling itself the collective, realizes that military satellites and drones have detected their silent reality-bending exclusion zone. So they take proactive action and initiate the emissary protocol. They send a message straight to FEMA and the Department of Defense, inviting the government inside. They offer a supervised, evolutionary exposure to 50 outside delegates, but they explicitly warn them that an unscreened group will face a 90% mortality rate. Basically, they're offering to explain their evolution, rather than just waiting around for a military bombardment.
And the response from the outside world? Well, it's exactly what you'd expect from baseline human consciousness. Major General Patricia Voss draws a hard line. She says, "We do not accept your characterization of this event as evolution. We are treating this as a potential public health emergency." General Voss responds with absolute cold military detachment. She completely refuses the medical pre-screening for her 50 delegates, totally underestimating the biological reality-bending threat of these geometric shapes. She thinks she's walking into a standard quarantine zone, totally unaware she's stepping right into a predator's mouth. The collective hive mind takes a moment to consider this, and in a truly chilling display of its new species-level logic, their response is absolute. They say, compatible will survive, incompatible will serve as demonstration. Wow. The collective is entirely ready to let these unscreened military delegates march directly into the fatal ambient broadcast field. They know for a fact that 45 of them are going to die instantly from endocrine failure, and they know those bodies will serve as irrefutable evidence that humanity's baseline architecture is officially obsolete. And that brings us to the end of our explainer. Dr. Vera Khost's data really leaves us staring at the very concrete we walk on every day with, let's be honest, a whole new level of paranoia. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. When your own urban environment finally wakes up and demands integration, will your stress response be the disease that kills you or the cure that evolves you? Definitely something to think about next time your heart starts racing in the middle of a quiet city street. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and stay curious.